Today I'm going to talk about my life as a young monk and the practice of Hua Tao, or mind before thought meditation, which is the main meditation topic in our Chan or Zen school of Buddhism in China. So in 1984 I arrived in Hong Kong and I moved into Olamji, which means precious woods or small forest, a grove monastery. And this is located in Hong Kong on Lantau Islands, and it's a mountain monastery with no road access. There's just a footpath. So I moved in, and there was a newly constructed large Chan hall that had recently been inaugurated. But it stood mainly empty. When I moved into the monastery, there was my master's first monk who lived outside as a hermit, and also there was another monk with various psychological challenges living there. Apart from that, there were about 30 nuns at various levels of spirituality. A lot of them had come from very difficult lives, escaping abuse, poverty, poor education, but there were a handful that had come from executive positions in work, highly educated, multilingual, knew all the Buddhist sutras, some of them by memory. In fact, their memories were from an animal. It's something you don't see in the younger Sangha, probably because of technology. So the Sifu told me not to work, but to focus on meditation, but the nuns needed help to get the shopping, because I said there was no road access. So there was a footpath, and you had to go with a pole over your shoulder called a danza, and go up with a couple of sacks hanging off each end and carry it back down. So I got up the footpath, which was about a mile away. So it was steep uphill inclines, the first half, and then it levelled off. So I went up empty with just a pole and 2 bits of wire, and I went to the local shop by the bus stop, and the nuns had already phoned ahead with the order and given it to me written in Chinese. And the shop would give me the goods, and I'd put it on my shoulder and go back down to the monastery, which would take me a bit longer than getting up. The weight of it was unbelievable. The first time I picked it up, I couldn't believe I was going to make it. But of course, gradually I started to get used to it. And I did a lot of this, walking up and down the concrete, or partly concreted footpath in bare feet. And that was one of my jobs. The other was sweeping the yard, catching snakes for the nuns in the vegetable gardens, which of course terrified me at first. I'd never been near snakes before, but you get used to them, like anything else. My bed was just 5 wooden planks on 2 trestles. But because I've been living with gypsies on the side of the road in the UK, it seemed quite luxurious to me. I had a tap, I had a squat toilet and a cold shower. And there were 2 meals a day, hot meals at fixed times, something I was not used to. And I could sleep peacefully through the night. I didn't have to keep one ear open for the horses getting off on the road or any undesirable people turning up. So what will probably seem harsh to most people, because my personal history was actually quite easy for me. So I started going into meditation hall as Sifu suggested. And I would spend a lot of time in there. Most of the time I was the only one in there, apart from After early morning chanting, we would sit in meditation. All the males, the monastery is divided, all the females are upstairs on the second terrace, and we were on the lower terrace for males. And the time we got together was usually at meal times and on special chanting days. So anyway, every day the bell was struck. Bop, 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 time to get up. And the first thing I smelt was wood smoke. The kitchen had just lit the fire. I really felt at home. I'd been living cooking on a stick fire for several years before I went there. So there's this very friendly group of people that seemed to trust me and like me, that I was just free to get on without the practice and virtually left alone. The nuns told me, you just go in the meditation room and practice. We'll do everything for you. All the cooking, cleaning, washing up, repair your clothes if you want. You just ask. And in return, I was expected to move heavy items for them, like shopping. Sifu once told me, be very careful with the nuns. We need them desperately. They do all the cooking and cleaning and look after us. We just can't manage without them. Whatever you do, do not upset the nuns. He mentioned this a couple of times. So anyway, the meditation practice I was doing is known as Hua Tao. This means word, head, or it can also mean a beginning or an end. So we have beginning or end of words. So I like to translate it as mind before thought, because of course we usually think in words. So mind before thought is a state known as your original nature, Banlai Minwu in Chinese, where there are no words going around in a samsaric whirlpool of egotistic self-dialogue. The idea is direct entry with a shingle chopper. You just go straight in. You don't have time to mess around with other stuff. That's probably why deep jhana practice in China was discouraged, because it takes up a lot of time that's separate from the main inquiry, who am I? But Hua Tao practice is very cleverly designed, so it contains both elements. You start from concentration and end up in wisdom. So way to get into deep concentration, I've already outlined some of the prerequisites. That's to train the breath to be smooth, light, free. It's to train the body to be flexible so you can sit still for long periods. And the chanting, a concentration on mantras, develops a strong mind and will that's required when you're asked to memorize such long texts. So the art of sitting in meditation, for me, I've been exposed to both aspects of Zen meditation before I went to Hong Kong, both the Saodong or Soto and the Rinzai or Linchi schools of Buddhism. And one is just to sit. You sit without trying to think and not trying to think. The idea being you're already there. And the other school teaches Hua Tao, questions such as, who are you? That dissolve later into, what are you? You is what? And it keeps peeling off every psychological layer that you mistake for your real self. So when we sit in meditation, I've done a demonstration of what to do with your legs, but that's not the important point. The important part is what you do with your mind. You keep your back very straight. It's as though you're suspended from the sky by a piece of string. In China, you won't see people holding this mudra like they do in Japan, commonly. Why? Because we sit for very long periods, and you won't be able to hold it without support. We've let go of your body. How are you going to know what you're doing with your hands? Totally irrelevant. But we often sit like that at the beginning, till we started to close the gates of the sensations and feelings are not as strong for us. It's gone. So when we start in meditation, the first time is usually a surprise. We enter the whirlwind of samsaric thought and desire. We had no idea it was so noisy, rattling around in there. So Hartal uses the doubts method. Who am I? Not quite sure. Imagine you just get your front door and you put your hand in your pocket to get your key. It's not there. Where's my key? Well, I've lost myself. It's the same feeling. I forgot who I am because there's so much internal stuff going on, I can't see clearly. So in the beginning, we hold the doubts. Who am I? Not quite sure. That feeling I just described. What is it? I don't know. It just puts a brake on the mind, which won't stop at once. There's a gradual process of it slowing down. And of course, the doubt process in the beginning is very coarse. It's only a form of subtle, false thinking. But over time, it will refine and dissolve. And you'll end up in the same place as Soto Zen. All of these meditations are like prongs of a fork that come together in the handle. Where the words end, the practice really starts to begin. You get used to sitting and answering the question, and you'll notice a few things will happen. As you start to enter jhana states, time stops. Because your mind's not calculating, there's nothing to measure time with. The sensations of the body disappear. This is known as closing the 6 gates of the senses, I.e. known as tongue, body and mind. We don't force them to shut, but they're ignored as a consequence of our attention being directly on the doubt about who we really are and what is the nature of reality. Later on, the doubt will become a state of awe. And freedom, and eventually awakening. So there are places that you can go wrong, and this is not very well articulated in some Zen or Chan circles. When you start going into jhana, the first one is joy, a sort of ecstasy. Women often find it has a sexual feeling to it. And there are different types, light jhana and heavy jhana. The heavy jhana requires isolation and a great deal of time. It's probably why the Chinese started to lessen their use of it and focus more on Chan practice, which would be a balance of jhana and vipassana when it's working well. And it's acknowledged that you only need to get to the second jhana to be able to start to see clearly. But of course, awakening doesn't usually come during meditation. It's a consequence of training the mind. For instance, the Buddha on the night of his awakening sat in jhana. And when he came out, and he sat and looked around him and looked into the sky and saw the morning star. That was the result of successful jhana practice, enabling him to do vipassana, or just to see clearly. And he knew then everything was perfect, and it always has been. And it was the misconceptions in his mind and attachments to this samsaric world that made him think otherwise. He thought this discovery was so subtle and unique he would never be able to explain it. But he did, and some of us get it because it's our essential nature. So anyhow, I worked with this for a few years at Bolam Monastery, and gradually other monks came, younger ones, some really nice guys. We started holding large meditation retreats. Dozens of people would turn up. Because the discipline is just totally intense during Chan retreats, the Chan 7 as we call it. All sorts of funny things would happen. People have breakdowns, involuntary movements, you start jumping because the chi is starting to flow fast, but some of your blockages won't allow it to flow, so all force through. You'll see people actually jumping right up off the floor occasionally. No, they're not levitating. All of these jhana experiences and stuff caused by jhana are just side effects of concentration. Even the awakenings, like you read about in Japanese Zen, I became awakened. No, you didn't. You just experienced a jhana state. And it's got nothing to do with insight. Because it will wear off and you'll be the same person again. It doesn't change you fundamentally at your core. So the idea of jhana practice is, or Chan practice, we can't force an awakening. We can't predict when it might come, but we can set the conditions for enlightenment or awakening to arise, and that's done by lowering the lower fetters: greed, hate, and delusion. The 6 winds of wanting fame, money, sex, sleep, food. I forgot the 6th one, but you get the idea. It's about purifying your mind so that goodness will manifest. So the practice of Hua Tao is the main one in China today. But not all the monks and nuns or lay people can raise the doubt. Without that, it fails. And the critique of our style of meditation over, say, shikantaza, just sitting, is that dogs and cats sit around all day just sitting. The mindfulness movement just sits around all day just watching. It makes them quite accepting of life and subservient to the boss of the organisations that's paid for their costs, but does it really change them? Does it lead to the arising of wisdom and the end of birth and death? These are deep questions, and the answers and conclusions are different for different people at different times. None of this is really fixed, and it's wrong to say that one sect of Buddhism is better than another. That depends entirely on your personal history and what you might be good at. There are plenty of monks and nuns that never meditate formally. They just do repentance, chanting ceremonies. However, they're extremely good monks and nuns, and some of them are quite wise. But they can't raise doubts. They find it hard to meditate. So reciting mantras all day like Amrita Buddha is the best option for them, and will greatly improve their lives. In fact, other schools are part of Chan Buddhism. They affect its philosophy from the main Buddhist sutras like the Lotus Sutra, the idea of skilling means in teaching, using any device possible to help people is there. The Pure Land School, which is the largest in China, seemingly so different from Chan, calling from other help, so you can go to a Buddhist heaven, seems to be a much later development aimed at competing sects of Buddhism trying to gain support and threatening people that didn't believe it with death. You just read it in some of the Mahayana sutras. The Buddha never did anything like that. This is all later propaganda that arose in India when philosophers and people starting new schools went too far away from the Buddha's original ideas. But they all contain the essence of Buddhism, which is the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path, overcoming greed, hope and delusion. So I'll stop there today. Next time I'm going to talk about large organised Chan, Huatao retreats in big monasteries in China with hundreds of monks and lay people in attendance and what that's like.